And we're going to have another Newsbite, and this is from Barasa, and it's about the audio trauma healing program. Last year, we made some talk about how we were piloting this and developing it. And so Barasa is going to give us an update on what is going on with audio trauma healing.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you all for being here. This is the first COP I attended was in 2011. So I keep counting here with Harriet. So we were few, but I'm glad the numbers keep increasing every year. We've been doing audio trauma healing in the Great Lakes region of Africa, Central African Republic, all the way to DRC, Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan. We have learned from both successes and challenges, the way this program is transforming communities of people in these countries. We see we now see the urgent opportunity to reach large number of oral people, probably those in remote areas. And I want to give you an example. Last week I was in Nairobi with Bible Society of Kenya, and they were on a mission to explore the opportunities for Bible translation in Western Kenya, bordering Tanzania. And quickly, when they were meeting this almost 100 pastors, they discussed all the programs they do. And then they asked the pastors, which one do you want us to do first? They were unanimous in saying they want to do trauma healing first. And where did they hear about trauma healing? It was through the radio program. So audio is reaching out to many communities, many people in different parts of the region. Radio stations have continued to register or increase the number of listeners. The listenership is increasing from the radio station. But let me give you a summary. How do I play around with this, Harriet?
Right there you can see. And
Okay.
do this one.
Okay. Yeah, I'll give you a quick overview. I have the figures there for those who love numbers. We have Rwanda, we have Central African Republic, we have DRC, Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and South Sudan. In total, we are on 25 radio stations in these countries. You can see the numbers over there. To date, we have over 302 episodes that have been aired, and this is the figures of December, and these numbers have gone up. We have over 37,000 people that have responded. We have the call-in mechanisms, people calling in, very innovative ways of reaching out people using WhatsApp, Facebook. Others have even gone as far as using Twitter. We have 286 equipping sessions that were completed by these Bible societies in 2016. To date, we have 9 languages on air. 11 languages that have been recorded. And all of them are on air. We had originally planned 5 languages, but so far we are trending at 11 languages. The 12th one will be recorded soon. And going forward, we are going to do even more recordings. Quick lessons that we've learned from this is that the radio has become is very popular right now. The plans are, we have also learned that we need to pilot even using audio trauma healing, combining with, for those who know faith comes by hearing. We are working to see how we can combine audio with faith comes by hearing for those who are in listening groups. We've already rolled out a pilot we started 2 weeks ago. We were in Tanzania at a refugee camp that has Burundians and the Congolese, working with In Touch Ministries. We have audio in 3 languages, in DRC Swahili, Swahili Tanzania, and Kirundi, put on an SD device in a proclaimer. So these leaders are being trained, will go through an equipping session, but the essence is that they will be in a listening group. We have also seen in northern Uganda where the pastor uses audio recordings as a basis for group discussion before the sermon. So it's evolving in other ways other than being on air. It's growing pretty well. Going forward, also, we are looking to partner with Africa by Radio. It's a network of radio stations, 280 Christian radio stations across Africa. And we see how we can partner with them to have our audio recordings on air on these radio stations. They are willing to partner with us. This is a South Africa-based group, and we'll see how that works out. To finish, I just want to share something from Uganda, a testimony from a radio station manager in northern Uganda that airs audio trauma healing, our programs. And here's what she says. Audio trauma healing is a unique and popular program that we air on Sundays, offering scripture resources to our listeners. As a media house, this program has increased the number of listeners tuning into our radio station. As a result, the number of callers to our station continue to increase week after week. We are very happy with this uniquely packaged Christian materials that are so critical to northern Uganda, a region that has continued to experience trauma. We have continually promoted the program on our sister media networks, thus enabling more people to tune in to listen to our program. That is the regional sales manager for a secular radio station in Uganda. So we've seen growth, we've seen opportunities for partnerships with radio stations, and Harriet will attest that when we began, we thought all radio stations were demanding higher payments before they air the programs. But now, because of the popularity, it's almost becoming subsidized and is heading to being aired for free. So that's a huge success for us. It wasn't easy, but we're looking for more opportunities for growth as we expand this program to other regions. Thank you very much.
And thank you to Mona Hanine, to Pete Stover, who's doing our streaming, to Debbie, and to many others who put in long hours to produce these programs, to promote them, and to get them out. And what they will do is do advocacy for trauma healing, and the idea is that people call in, the people that call in are put in touch with a facilitator, and this is why the database becomes the backbone of our collaboration, because we want to know where those facilitators are when we get callers, that we can say, oh, you're in this town or this city, we have a facilitator, we have a church, go and do some face-to-face work with them. So thank you, and it's a great step forward. Now we're going to have dear friend Mary Crickmore. I don't know when I met you, Mary, but
When you came to my village in 1996.
I have been to Dungal. Yes, I have been to Dungal. And I have eaten rice with sand in it because there's so much wind off the Sahara. There's no possibility of having no sand, no matter what you do. Thank you. Yes, my sister Grace and her husband and Ralph and I went and were with you and Scott. One of the established texts on development is Everett Rogers' Diffusion of Innovations. Everybody reads it. It's sort of like, as far as I know, one of the Hallmark books. He's been popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. You will see his books in airports. They're easier to read, same content pretty much. Everybody accepts them, except Mary. And I remember talking to her, and she said, yeah. But really on the ground, I haven't found that that's really how it works because she has been going back and forth with Niger, Mali, Nigeria, and other countries, Bangladesh, where World Renew works in their comprehensive holistic program of meeting needs of groups, whatever those needs might be, to help them. So really an example to us and a resource expertise available to us in how to do sort of holistic development and now incorporating trauma healing into the many other things they do. So we are listening to someone who maybe is better than Everett Rogers. Mary.
Okay, my topic is power and money, complexities of resources and program sustainability. Right now, I want everybody to think about your room, your hotel room, or your room where you slept last night. Picture in your mind your room. This is a nice guest house room for an equipping session in West Africa. Okay, now think about what we had for lunch yesterday. Picture in your mind. I don't know how much that lunch cost. In our equipping session in Nigeria, we had a very nice festive lunch of what we call semolina. It's like cream of wheat and leaf sauce. And that cost us under $2 a serving. So there's some differences. 100 years ago, however, there wasn't that much difference between North America and Africa. Canada and Mali. Canada, 100 years ago, and Mali. Now, what happened? Here is a graph that shows after World War I, a whole bunch of countries started on a massive upward growth of gross domestic product per capita. Where was Mali? We don't even have data before 1960, but Mali started out about the same, pretty close to these other countries, but Mali didn't have that giant growth spurt. Many, many other countries in the world did not have that giant growth spurt. Now there's something else going on in North America that I don't have a slide for, but you've probably heard about income inequality and the growing gap between the top 1% billionaire, multimillionaires, and the average person. So we've also got some inequality dynamics going on in America. What we're going to do now is discussions, and I'm going to set you up. I want you to have either one partner or two partners. I want you to be in twos or threes, and you'll stay in those same twos or threes for the rest of the session. Here is your first discussion question. How do you think that inequality affects relationships between people and organizations in the global north and people and organizations in the global south? And if you are in a twosome that you're only working in North America and not overseas, you can discuss how does the income inequality in the United States affect relationships between the upper middle class folks and the people who are on the bottom end of the spectrum. So take 3 minutes and find your partner or your threesome and talk about that question. Then I'll ring the bell and I'll have my microphone assistants come up. Okay, we're going to hear now just a few. This time we're gonna pick on you at random. Scott pick 3 different tables at random, and Nancy will pick 3 different tables at random, and give the mic, and somebody just share very briefly what did you say in your conversation.
So I finally have power.
Yes.
We'll go to this table here. You're not ready? Okay. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so we were just talking about, I did some work with refugees in Austria, and most of the refugees were from the global south. And I found that we were all, as white Westerners, assumed to have all the answers all the time. And that was sometimes very overwhelming. But, for people that had never had no ability to read, had never been to a real doctor, had never, been to school at all. They just assumed that, we had all this access, and so we must have all this knowledge and authority. So that was sometimes difficult to know how to handle, so that we weren't always in the expert position, because sometimes we really weren't experts. We didn't know everything. So,
Thank you.
We just had a conversation a little bit about the differences in the global north and the global south, and when we have the opportunity as the global north to meet with the global south, if we come with an attitude of humility and understanding that poverty comes in different shapes and forms, and we have a poverty possibly in our spirit, and when we're meeting a lot with the global south, well, they might have material poverty. Typically, spiritually, that's not the case. So if we come learning from each other and connecting with each other in humility, then it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, somebody from this side?
This is an experience from Togo and Benin, West Africa. One of the first things that a branch has to do is consider contingency preparations. One of those preparations is evacuation. And so when we thought about evacuation plans, well, that only kind of applied to the expatriates that were there, not our national colleagues. And we were privileged because we had insurance policies that would cover us to evacuate us in case of emergency. So it was a real disparity there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. For us, we didn't have enough time to discuss. It was very interesting. But we say that the global south and the global north, there is an issue of blaming each other. You say like, we are poor because of you, and then global north, you are poor because of you. So it's like there's a sense of, no one is taking responsibility. So we need to discuss about that issue of blaming each other. The second is the issue of inferiority and superiority. Where somebody say, by the way, I know your problem. I can fix your problem.
Yeah.
And then you say, no, that's not my problem. And they say, no, I know your problem. So it's almost that debate always in Christian organizations, secular organizations, fixing problem which is not the real problem.
Thank you very much. And one more from this side.
So my experience is mainly from Egypt, and I found that there's like a systemic victimization. It's like a learned dependence, and people feel that their only hope is either immigration or funding from the West. And even in some areas, there's still like the stink of colonialism, where there's just this, like people have mentioned, this superiority and inferiority, and a big gap between people.
Thank you. And one more over on this side.
Yeah, there are two things. Number one has to do with what's the definition of poverty? When you are defining me to be poor, what parameters have you used to define me poor and for you to be rich? And so there is a conflict in terms of what parameters the global north are using to define poverty and what parameters the global south are using to define poverty, and they don't agree. And so that definition of poverty is still an illusion, either for the global south or the global north. And the second thing has to do with resources. You cannot use a resource you have not extracted. And if you are extracting a resource, you need to process it in terms of why you need it. And I think there is an upper aspect whereby who is having the resources? Is the global north having the resources or the global south? And so each one of them may be having resources, but how have they extracted it? And when they are processing it for their own use or for the other person's use?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Thanks for the good discussions. Now, the thing is, we are not going to escape this context. We are not going to be able to flip a switch on the wall and change this income disparity and this historical context that we're living with. So we cannot avoid this. We cannot withdraw with it. From it, we have to engage with it. I would like you, if you have read either of these books, When Helping Hurts or When Charity Destroys Dignity, would you raise your hand? I'd just like to get a feel for how many people are familiar with it. It's a little bit more than half the room. So I'm not sure if I need to give this. Yes. Just joking. These are very good books. Some of the concepts I'll have today will be contained also in those books. But what I'm going to share with you today comes from, and I bet you didn't know, there is another workshop developed by the Hill Sisters in 2010. It's a little known, but it's the Shalom Workshop. And we've done so much involvement in trauma healing that we haven't done a whole lot of the Shalom workshops. We've probably done about 4 of them in West Africa. But this is also a scripture engagement workshop. And it is talking about how can the church work in their community using biblical principles to bring God's kingdom and God's will and shalom into their community. It has 9 core lessons, and after an experience in January with a group of pastors in Senegal, I've decided that we're going to put it into a more orality version. But today I'm going to give you just a taste of lesson 6. So I'm going to share with you at lesson 6 pretty much as it happens in a workshop. So, lesson 6, resources. This building is in Bamako, Mali, and it was in that state in 1985 when I arrived, and it is still unfinished. For over 30 years, nothing has been done to it. Does this picture remind you of any Bible passage? The man who started the building and couldn't finish. And he's embarrassed because he couldn't finish. And everybody can see this man started his building and was not able to finish. Now, when we're doing any kind of program, including trauma healing and other programs as well, we need to first assemble our resources. We need to know that we can actually have the resources to do the job. Otherwise, we're going to announce that something is going to happen, and then we're going to be embarrassed that we announced it or we started it and we didn't finish it. So the idea of resources is assemble your resources as a good steward and make sure that you can do the job that you believe God wants you to do. Now, there are a couple of pitfalls or stumbling blocks that we have when we're dealing with resources and programs. Stumbling block number 1, or pitfall number 1, we're too poor to do anything. Passivity. We're just going to sit here and be discouraged because we are too poor. Now, here is one Bible passage that we shared in the Shalom workshop, and see if you can think of some other ones. But let's read together, all together, this passage from 1 Corinthians 1, 4-7. I give thanks to my God always for you, because of the grace of God that has been given you in Christ Jesus. For in every way you have been enriched in him, in speech and knowledge of every kind, just as the testimony of Christ has been strengthened among you, so that you are not lacking in any spiritual gift. Talk with your partner just for a couple minutes now. What does this verse say to the person that says we're too poor to do anything? And what other scripture passages can you think of that are pertinent to the we're too poor argument?
We were talking about how someone with this perspective comes in and says we are too poor to do anything. They're actually believing in their own strength rather than believing in God. As we see the verse, so that you are not lacking in any spiritual gift. If God is if God has called you for something and He has given you the idea, He's the one who's going to give you the resources to finish those ideas. That's what we were talking about.
Thank you. Thank you. Over here? Are they too shy?
Okay, we were just talking about how dependency kills innovation. And so you cannot say that you are too poor to do anything. In you there is ability to do something. You have good weather, you have good, giving the example of good weather. That's a resource. You can farm, you can contribute something towards your ability to deliver. And so it is that being able to kill that cycle of dependency that kills innovation.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't know the full extent of all this, but what I saw when I was in Bangladesh was that there in the villages there are women's groups, and when they met, they would start each bringing a very small amount of money. I mean, a very very tiny amount of money. But what happened is they started pooling it, and so then after a while, they were able then to make loans to other women in the group. So I believe that those women who are poor beyond imagination would say that they are not too poor to do what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay.
I am reading from the book of Acts, chapter 3,
Mm-hmm.
when Peter and John was approaching the beautiful gate. And there's this man, lame from birth, asking for alms from them. And he was expecting some charity from them. But Peter said, I have no silver and gold, but what I do have, I give to you. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk. And he took them by the right hand and raised him up, and immediately his feet and ankles were made strong.
Wonderful passage. Thank you.
We kind of want to ask why they're saying they're too poor to do anything. Because some people actually believe they're too poor to do anything, but other people, they are just trying to tell me what they think I want to know or what they think I want to hear. Some people will say that because it's always worth a try. Maybe they'll give me something, even if I don't really believe that about myself. And other people, they think that I think they're too poor, so they'll just go along with it because it makes me happy.
Thank you so much, Deb. And if they learn that when you say this, money comes, yeah, I would say it too. Thank you. And one more over here.
We were talking with this about, it seems to be leveling the playing field, where we have all been given speech and knowledge, we have all been given spiritual gifts, so we didn't take it as this is talking about money, but it's talking about we are all God's children, we are on the level playing field, so it should kind of even things out and be able to walk hand in hand.
Yeah.
Way.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wonderful insight. Let's look at another pitfall. Neglecting transparency. Now, here is a verse out of 2 Corinthians 8, a passage that talks about how Paul used transparency when they were handling money. So we've got a biblical passage that talks about specific measures that were taken for transparency. So let me read this for us. For Titus not only welcomed our appeal, but he is coming to you with much enthusiasm on his own initiative, and we are sending along with him the brother who is praised by all the churches for his service to the gospel. What is more, he was chosen by the churches to accompany us as we carry the offering, which we administer in order to honor the Lord himself and to show our eagerness to help. We want to avoid any criticism of the way we administer this liberal gift, for we are taking pains to do what is right, not only in the eyes of the Lord, but also in the eyes of men. Take 3 minutes and talk in your pairs and triplets. How much more could you implement this in the context where you're working? Could you do this more? And specifically, how? Okay, need to stop your discussions. You can continue talking during lunches and breaks, and you know, I don't expect anyone to figure things out in a 3-minute discussion, but I want to get your thoughts going. So, do we have somebody from the side? Yes.
I think that one of the issues that came up was, for instance, you organizing a healing group, and some of the facilitators would want to assume that there is some money involved in the process of conducting the healing group. And because probably there are some organizations that might be doing similar work in the community and normally would have given them something. So there is this perception. What are you holding back?
Yeah.
What are you holding back?
Yes, suspicion, imagining that there's money changing hands because you don't, when you don't have information, you make up information in your head of what you imagine is happening. Thank you very much. Okay, over on the side.
Sorry, we just had a change of heart.
Okay. Oh, behind you.
Now, the concern which we discussed with my colleague here is when it comes to transparency, it's very easy to be asked to be transparent when it's a lot of money, but when it's little money, forget about it. So if you give somebody 100 shillings in Kenyan shillings, he feels he's entitled to use it the way they want. But so certain amount of money is for pocket money, no accountability. These are amount of money which you can be accountable. And our feeling is transparency needs to cut across, whether it's little money or much money, transparency to cut across.
Thank you, and I think we have a specific Bible passage that talks directly to that, about being faithful in little, it is also faithful in much. This side, one more person, yeah.
We had an interesting case in Niger on a trauma healing workshop. We actually offered money at the end to help them with their healing groups. This was after churches had been burnt down in that country, and most of them refused it, because they couldn't see how to do it in such a way that the people in the groups wouldn't expect them to have vast amounts of money that they ought to be giving to them. So because there wasn't an easy way of making transparency clear, they refused the money, which is the only time I've ever seen that happen, but it was fascinating.
Wonderful example, thank you. And one more from this side.
He's shy, but he's going to do it.
Anyway, on our table we are saying that at times Christians and the Christian organizations, we think we are accountable to God and that's all. So we are not bothered about men. And we are saying whoever is accountable to God, whoever meets God's expectations, because they are so high and so complex, then he or she wouldn't fear being accountable to man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, now we're going to do a Bible study, and we're going to do this in your groups. You have on your table pages that are on building the tabernacle, and there's 3 papers per table, so there should be hopefully enough for every pair or every triplet to have your paper, and you can write on it. But let me explain to you now what you're going to be looking for. There are 6 specific things you're going to look for in the passages about building the tabernacle, 6 types of resources. And one of the important things here is when we say the word resources, if the thing that comes first to your mind is money, that's not the way it is. We've got 6 kinds of resources, all of which you generally have to have in place. So let me tell a little bit about each of these resources. You have gold, silver, and money. That is a resource that comes in first. But then we also have materials, such as wood, water, animals, cloth, stones, grain. In trauma healing, rooms to meet in, chairs, food prepared. We call this in techno speak in-kind contributions. But for here, we're just going to call it materials. Thirdly, we have skills and knowledge. Some people have to have some specialized skills to do something. People have to have the knowledge to accomplish the goal. But number 4, and this is different, people have to be willing to make effort for the goal. If you've got a very smart person, unmotivated, just going to sit and do nothing, that's not going to help you accomplish your goal. So you've got to have people who are willing to make effort, and they've got to have skills and knowledge. Fifthly, you have to have good relationships between the people. You need unity, you need communication, you need leadership, you need to be organized. If you have a whole bunch of skilled, motivated people, totally disorganized, you're missing a resource. So the relationships, the communication and organization, that in itself is a resource. In techno speak, we can call it social capital. For here, we're going to call it relationships. 6th is help from God and receptivity to that help. Now, we know that God is omnipresent. God is always willing to help. So we know that that resource is always there, available, but we might call this one, number 6, we might call it spirituality. Or we might call it righteousness and obedience and prayer. But it is part of the human resources that the human beings have a connectivity to God so that God can help them. Because if they are doing abuse of power, for example, God is not going to help them. Satan is going to help them increase their abuse of power. But they're not going to get this very important resource of help from God. So these are 6 separate things, and you want to have all 6 of them. So now look, and if you're streaming at home, look up the passages. We've got it on the screen. Exodus 25, 31, 36, and 39, and you've got the paper, so you can write on your paper when you see, look for all 6 in the passages, and when you find them, underline them, and then in the margin put the number. that make sense to everybody? Okay, you got 5 minutes. Okay, so we're going to not do this without roving microphones. I'm going to ask this table over here, did you find resource number 1? And tell me what, just the chapter and verse. Verse 3 of 25:3. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's alluded to when Moses says further they had to stop people from doing things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
36:6. Thank you. I'll pick on the table over there. Did you find number 2? And in what verse? Just give us chapter and verse. 25:4. 25:3-4. Okay. Did a table find number 3? If you found number 3, raise your hand. Okay, this table here, you found number 3. What's the chapter and verse? Mm-hmm. 31 verses 2 and 3. Okay, did a table find number 4? Yeah, this table. What chapter and verse for number 4? Chapter 36. 36 verse 2. And 25 verse 2. For people willing to make effort for the goal. Okay, good relationships between people, unity, communication, and leadership. Did anybody find number 5? Raise your hand and we'll ask you for the chapter and verse. Who found number 5? Way back there, Nancy. Yep.
Chapter 36,
Mm-hmm.
verses 2 and 3. And 4.
Chapter 36, 2 and 3.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
then chapter 36, verses 6, 7, and 8.
36 chapters, verses 6, 7, 8. Uh-huh. Thank you. Who found number 6? If your table found number 6 or your partner found number 6, raise your hand. Who located number 6? Way back. Yep. Just shout out the chapter and verse nice and loud for us. 25:8. Okay. Does anyone have chapters or verses to add to any of these? Yes, over here.
You know, I frankly would like to add the motivation and the leading of the Lord and why all these things are there, and that's in chapter 25 in verse 1 when God told Moses to tell Israel to bring me your sacred offerings, accepted offerings from all whose hearts were moved
Mm-hmm.
off of them. And then at the end of that section, he says, have the people build me a holy sanctuary so that I can live among them.
Mm-hmm.
You must build this tabernacle, his furnishings, that I will show them. So it had the whole plan, the whole idea, the whole motivation was first motivated by God.
Mm-hmm.
And then he raised up all these things.
Okay, so you would put that as number 6, that God, help from God by giving them the idea of what to do and what to work on. Okay, so that's 25, 1-2. 25, 1, and yeah, we've got 25, 8 and 9, so now 25, 1 and 2. Yep. Okay, so, yeah, so 36, verse 2 is also under help from God. Okay, thank you very much. This is a practical use of Scripture to illustrate that we've got 6 important key resources that we need to have present. Now I'm going to tell you 2 true stories. You go ahead and have a seat. It'll be a while before we do the next flip chart. So I'm going to read you or tell you 2 true stories. And I want you to compare in your mind what happened in these stories and what happened in Exodus. How is it similar? How is it different? And look for those 6 resources in the stories. And think about, did they have that resource? Did they fail because they didn't have it? Did they have it locally, or did they seek it from an external source? So, first story is about a village that had their well collapse. That's their well, and it was a 50-meter deep well. It was dug by like their grandparents, great-grandparents. And at the bottom level of the well was in sandy ground. And so over time, the walls were caving in, and it would be mud on the bottom, and they would lower someone on a rope. They'd put the dirty sand into a bucket, raise it up so that they could have water again. So they did this a number of times, but one day they had lowered the guy down to put the mud into the bucket, and he started screaming, and they quickly pulled him up because the entire bottom of the well was caving in on him. And they decided, we are not going to send anyone down into the well to fix it again. We can't use this well. So they put all the thorns on it so that animals and kids wouldn't fall into it. And they had to load a 200-liter barrel onto a donkey cart and take it a 5-mile round trip every day to bring just the basic water to the village. Now, they had cows. They had to send the cows away to another place where there was a different well. A lot of the people moved out with relatives to another location that had more water. So it was a reduced number of people in the village, and they were surviving on the water brought from the donkey cart. So they sent us a request for help, and they also talked with the local government. And the local government said, we know of an agency that can send a trainer to you, and he can teach you how to make concave bricks to line a well, and you will have to find the money for the cement and for the iron rebar in order to make a cement-lined well that's never going to cave in. It's going to last 100 years. But so we can find the guy to teach you how to make the bricks and to supervise you so that you do it correctly, but we can't pay for your cement and your iron rebar. Well, it happened at that time that our fundraising department in Canada sent us a message, say there's a donor in Canada that wants to give money for a well somewhere in Africa. Do you have any place that needs a well? And we said, yes, we'll take the money. And so we got the transfer from Canada, and we were able to talk with the village and say, we have a donor who will provide your cement and your iron rebar. Now, to make cement, you need water and you need sand. So they had to go with the donkey cart multiple times to bring enough water to make the cement. They had to provide the workers to do all the digging first, because you dig it before then you line it with the concave bricks. And they hosted and fed the trainer guy who did come, and he taught them how to make the bricks, and he supervised that they were lining them in the well correctly and putting in the iron rebar correctly. And they did all of the work, and the women cooked the food for them, and they finished their well. So this is their well in use, and again, it was 50 meters deep, and so they were sometimes having a camel or a donkey pull the rope to pull the water out of the well. But they were very, very happy with their well. And then after that, another village said, before our well collapses, we want to get a cement-lined well too. And so a second village did exactly the same thing after this one. So that is the story of the village that needed a well. Now I'm going to tell you a story about another village. This is a man named Abraham. And Abraham's relatives one day sent word, wow, our village got a loan from a bank. We got thousands of dollars from the bank. Oop, thank you. And they said, your village could get thousands of dollars from the bank as well. So some of the men in the village were discussing, and they thought this would be a great idea to get money from the bank. And so 10 of them decided that they were gonna participate in this. And the 15 other men in the village said, no, we don't want to do this. I found out later the money had come from France, and France had sent this money to the National Agriculture Bank because they wanted to increase the supply of credit for farmers to buy agriculture inputs. But as far as the village knew, just is you can get money, lots of money from the bank. So at that time, this was before literacy had taken hold, no one in the village could read and write. And no one spoke French, the national language in which the bank worked. And so Abraham went down to the town, and he went to the same office that the other village had used, and they had guys in the office that were typing up in French on these papers, and they said, yes, we'll type this up for you and you'll get money from the bank. Later on, I saw that the papers that they typed up had all kinds of misinformation. They said that they were going to use rice fertilizer, and none of them were growing rice at the time. And it had all the names of all the men in the village, including the 15 men that didn't want to participate. But so the bank had all these papers. And yes, indeed, Abraham succeeded in picking up a big pile of money. It was equivalent, it was 2.5 million CFA, which is about $5,000. And he brought it back to the village. And the 15 men that didn't want to participate said, we're not going to touch that. You know, this is, you deal with this because we are not participating. And so the 10 guys that did want to participate, they divided up money, and there was money left over. So Abraham went to some of his friends and relatives in other villages, said, do you want some loan money? And he distributed out some, and then he bought a bunch of cows, and he distributed cows out to people on credit, and he was sure that he could remember all of it when the collection time came. Well, collection time came, and he couldn't collect all the money on time, and there was, in the bank papers, there was talk about penalties if the payment is late. And so they had about a $500 penalty to pay, but nobody in the village really knew about that. And Abraham sort of knew about it, but he kind of didn't take it very seriously. So when they went down, they gathered some of the money, but partial payment. So then they wound up borrowing money from somebody, some rich commerçant boutique, I'm trying to think of the English word, businessman. Yes. Yeah, and so they made their payment by borrowing some money. So end of the story was in a couple of years, they had defaulted. They didn't pay the whole thing back. And there was penalties building up, and the bank started this program of, now we're going to go out and collect all these bad loans. And this was quite a few years later. And they had the list of the guys who supposedly took the money. And so they were threatening to repossess people's cows and donkeys and stuff. So it was a very bad situation, and the village held a meeting, and so they all started blaming each other. Abraham was blaming the other people who didn't pay on time. The other people were blaming him. Why did you put our names in this? And it wound up into a fist fight between Abraham and the village chief, and it wound up that even to this day, Abraham has broken relationships with other people in that village. They don't want to go to his house. They don't want to talk to him. Everybody is still mad at him. And this happened in the 1990s. So broken relationships in this village, and everybody who did take that money has nothing to show for it today. Nobody got out of poverty with that money. So let's think for a minute. Why did helping help the first village that did the well and helping hurt the second village that did the bank loan? What were the dynamics that were different? Talk about that just for a couple minutes in your groups, and I'll ask Christina to come up because we're going to work on the flip chart again. Okay, we're going to do now a big group activity all together. We're going to use the 6 resources as a checklist. And so we're going to do it village by village. First, we'll start with the village that did the well. And we want to look through each of the 6 types of resources. Was it absent? Did it cause failure of the program because it was absent? Did they have it and they got it locally? Or did they have it and it came from outside? And in some cases, they might have gotten some local and some from outside. So let's think about the village that did the well. The money, was it absent? Was it local source money, or was it external money from outside? External. Okay, let's think about the raw materials. Was it absent and caused failure? Did they have it locally? Did it come from outside, the materials? Both. Some local, some external. Sand and water and food was local. Cement and iron rebar was external, although the cement and the iron rebar was very connected to the presence of money. Okay, skills and knowledge. Okay, we're hearing both skills and knowledge. They did know how to dig a well, but how to make the concave bricks and how to mount them was external. People willing to make effort for the goal. Local. People willing to make effort for the goal was local. Yeah. Yep. The donor also was, and the government, yeah, so some external also. Good relationships between people, unity, communication, and leadership. Yep, they had that locally. And we had some good external communications on the money side. Help from God. Did they have help from God? Yeah. Yeah, that was both external and internal. Now, at that time, this village was 100% Muslim, but with an openness to missionaries and openness to literacy. And certainly our good church members in Canada, who were the donors, had God laid on their hearts to help. So we've got, almost every case there was some local presence of the resource. Let's flip the page and let's talk about the village that did the bank loan. Was there money? External money. Did they contribute any raw materials to their project? No. Nothing in kind. Just the pure cash. Actually not. Yeah. Skills and knowledge, was that lacking? Did it cause failure of the program? Yeah, which skill? Literacy. Literacy skill was absent. Numeracy skill was absent. Yeah. Knowledge about how banks work was absent. Yeah, big gap there in the skills and knowledge. Okay, people willing to make effort for the goal. Yeah, making effort for the goal is different from just receiving money. It doesn't take effort to receive money, but to really work on the program. Yeah, Mike.
I think the external person had a goal.
Uh-huh.
France had a goal.
Yeah.
But the local people didn't know what the goal was.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was an external effort. Yeah. So it was absent locally, but there was effort and a goal externally. How about relationships between people? Communication, unity, leadership. Yeah. Serious absence. And the relationships wound up worse at the end of the story. Help from God and receptivity to his help. No. And by putting false things into the bank papers, I believe that they blocked themselves from getting help from God, because if you lie or you sin and you're disobedient, I think you've opened the door for Satan and you've shut the door on God's help. Okay, this is a checklist, and what I want you to do now, and you can do it in your pairs, think about a program that you are currently working with. And if you're working with multiple programs, you've just got to pick one thing you're working with in one location, go through the checklist and see, the 6 things, are they present and are they local or are they external? So take 5 minutes, think about a specific program that you're involved in. Thank you. Okay, we need to wrap up. It sounds like lots of people are talking and sharing ideas, which is wonderful. I want to let you know that I have 2 handouts. One is this lesson 6 of the Shalom workshop. I also have the entire Shalom workshop in PDF form. So if you want we've printed out 50 hard copies for today's lesson 6 on resources, if you prefer hard copy. If you want electronic copy, I'm assured that it should be available on the COP site. I also have a 2-page paper that I did, just summary paper on dangers of external funding. That also is electronically available, and there's 50 hard copies if you like to have paper that you can read on the plane on the way home. I just want to summarize this 6-point checklist is something that you can use to analyze a trauma healing program or any other program that you're doing. In trauma healing, we often bring in some external money, and we bring in external skills and knowledge. There's nothing bad about bringing in external skills and knowledge. This is what we are about, is bringing in knowledge and skills that they didn't have before. But my conclusion has been that never bring in that external money unless you're assured that the effort is present and the organization is present and enough spirituality and connection to God is present. So, and if people are supplying materials in kind, they're supplying buildings and chairs and meeting rooms and lodging people and feeding people, that's a sign that things are really positive and some external money isn't going to destroy them. But you've got to be very careful that there's readiness for the external money. And I think that if you assure that those other elements are present, and especially that the people are willing to make that effort, then you can cautiously bring in external money, and you're not going to destroy people, you're actually going to help people. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful being with you today.
Thank you so much, Mary. Mary did neglect giving one bit of history. When we were putting this Shalom course together, we were in Nairobi at a workshop for a week, and we had development people there, we had scripture engagement people there. And one morning, about, I don't know, Wednesday, Thursday through the week, I met Mary at the bottom of the stairs, and I said to her, Mary, I have to ask you something. And she said, Harriet, I have to ask you something. And I said, okay, you go first. Though I went first. I don't know who went first, but I said, Mary, I am just too busy. I can't edit this. Could you be the editor? And Mary said, Harriet, I want to tell you that I can only be involved in this if I can be the editor. So we had a wonderful moment of, yeah, that worked really well. And Mary's really stewarded this and developed it. And I would like to see it as a peace-building tool for communities, because the pastors, I was with McCurdy with her at the first pilot, and the pastors don't know how to get their churches to really work together. They have superficial agreement, and they don't know how to get everybody on board the development for the development of their community. So this is one thing we're hoping to pilot in Burundi. They've done a lot of trauma healing. Now they're saying, what about peace building? And I think knowing how to work together, giving everybody a voice, how to organize themselves, determine their goals, measure their progress, figure out what they want to do next is really going to be very helpful. So thank you, Mary, for all your hard work. The book is in French and in English. Yeah, and we're going PDF, yeah, in French and PDF.